Hello there. If your project venture has begun to work in the Agile mode, then you would be hearing terms like Scrum, product backlog, sprint, velocity, PO, impediment, and numerous more new terms that you might be wondering what they are. Then this Agile methodology training series is for you. We will discuss all the significant Agile and Scrum principles in this series, and you will have a clear understanding of what Agile is and how the end-to-end Agile approach functions after you have completed watching the series. Instead of doing a conventional tutorial session, we are going to use a fictional story of a restaurant owner Jane who wants a home delivery app, and we are going to see how an idea in the mind of Jane is converted into an app using Agile methodology. We are using a story narration to help you grab the Agile concepts in an entertaining way. We did a survey and 90% voted for story series kind of tutorial. So we have tried this approach. Let us know your thoughts in the comment section. We are going to post the future episodes periodically. Please subscribe to our channel if you have not already done so and hit the bell icon so that you will be notified when the videos are posted. We have got lots to cover. Let's get started. Jane is the owner of Vegan Gardens, a successful restaurant that serves vegan dishes. She has several branches, all strategically situated near the financial district, IT hubs, and her restaurant mostly caters to these workers for lunch and occasional dinners if they work late. Her clients love her food so much that she keeps getting frequent requests for weekday dinners and weekends for home delivery. Sometimes, if they are stuck at work, her clients also want the food to be delivered to their office. This is a fantastic additional revenue driver for Jane and also provides customers with great customer support to satisfy their needs. Jane thinks about these requests. The existing kitchen staff can also comfortably accommodate additional 20 to 30% orders. Therefore, Jane hires a few delivery boys and starts taking orders by phone. She gets a decent number of orders, but for both her team and the customers, the whole process was very cumbersome. Wrong items were sent several times. Customers had to wait over the phone for giving orders as she had fewer telephone lines. It also took too much time to order because the customers were not sure about what was available on the menu for the day. Delivery was late many a times as the delivery boys needed time to search the houses. Sometimes customers had to take up numerous calls to clarify their home address. For her, it was not scalable and it was a mess. She figured that if she had a mobile home delivery app built, then it would help her address all these issues. Customers didn't have to wait. They could easily see the items available on the menu. With a few clicks, they could order and indicate their location via phone GPS. The staff could see the ordered items properly, ensuring the delivery of the correct items. Delivery boys could also easily locate the customers' houses using the map softwares, adhering timely delivery. Online payments could also be done easily. She ran past this idea with her team and they were enthusiastic. Jane searches for a reputed company that could help her create the mobile app and finds WebWeave Software Solutions, which was apt for her requirements. The last time she hired a company to build an online reservation web app was a complete disaster because after 6 months of effort, they created something that did not meet her requirements. So this time, she made an in-depth research with the company to make sure it was good from all the aspects. It had very good reviews from many well-known customers. She fills in the contact us form and schedules a meeting with one of their consultants. Alex, one of the company's consultant, responds to Jane's query and he sets up an appointment for 1 hour to meet Jane to explore the project further. He shoots an email to Jane with a list of questions so that she is well prepared for the discussion. Jane confirms it, but she is curious to know how soon they could get the app up and running. 2 to 3 months, Alex replies. Last time it had consumed this much time to just finalize the requirements for the web app and also took several months before going online. So she was pleasantly surprised to know the time frame for the go live of the app and looked forward to it. Alex meets Jane on the scheduled time and day at her office. After a short friendly chat over a cup of coffee, they go through a couple of questions that Alex had sent over the email. Jane explains the business reasons and her vision for the app. She then pauses for a moment in the middle of the discussions and asks Alex how they could create an app that could go live in 3 months when her previous online project had consumed the same time just for finalizing the requirements. Jane says that she is very curious to understand this part. Alex then powers his laptop and informs Jane that he can explain it with his presentation and she would be able to understand better. Alex shows the slide to Jane and starts explaining. This is the traditional software development model. It is called the waterfall method. It has 5 phases: requirements, design, build, test, and deployment. In the requirements phase, there will be several sessions with the business team members to gather and document the requirements. The documentation in this method is extensive and the business requirements would be captured in BRD, that's the business requirement document, followed by capture of functional and non-functional requirements in the FRD, that's the functional requirement document. These documents would go to hundreds of pages and is the most time-consuming part of the project. Let's say if there are 15 features for an application, all the requirements of all the 15 will be detailed out, documented, reviewed, and approved by the business. It would consume 25 to 30% of the entire project timeline. So, if we keep 6 months project timeline, this phase alone can go up to 2 months. I think this is what you had experienced. Alex asks Jane and Jane nods. Alex continues and says it would have taken another 3 months before you saw the application in the test environment, and Jane nods to that as well. Alex continues to provide a quick overview on what happens behind the scenes. After the requirements are approved, this is followed by the design phase. This is where technical architects, solution designers come together and propose the designs and technical solutions for all your requirements. To finalize the designs and solutions, it can take 2 weeks to a month. Then comes the build phase. This is the stage where the software is actually developed. Software developers write their programs, create the required screen and features, and so on. It can take up to 30% of the project timeline for the development process. We can claim 2 months. Once development is complete, we hop onto the testing phase, which has 2 levels of testing. It can take up to 10 to 15% of the project time. We can say a month. We begin with system integration testing, which is done by the testers and the QA team. Once it passes SIT, then it will be available for UAT, which is the user acceptance testing. This is the stage where we can see the actual screens and the functionalities. That is about 3 months after the approval of the requirements. Jane nods. And at that point of time, if you had told them that it was not what you had envisioned and needed improvements or changes, they would have said that they cannot accommodate any changes. It is because the change will again have to go over the entire life cycle of design, build, test, and they would have informed you to raise a change request. Jane agrees and said that they decided to go live with what had been built because they had no extra budget. Jane then asked how his team would be able to overcome these challenges and if they were using a better software technology. Alex smiled and informed that there was no technology, but the change was in the software development methodology and it was called Agile. Jane was interested in learning more about it. Alex moved over to the next slide to continue. Alex shows the slide to Jane and continues explaining. This is Agile methodology. It is an iterative development model. Here too, we will have the elicitation sessions, but they are documented in terms of epics and user stories. Very light documentation so that we can cut down time to half, as Agile principle recommends interaction between team members to extensive documentation. Also, not all the requirements need to be detailed out. Only the requirements which are of top priority are to be detailed out. Alex continues, let's assume out of the 15 features, only 7 are absolutely necessary for the customers to start using the home delivery app. Then detailing and refinement of just those 7 features are required to begin with. This is also termed as MVP, minimum viable product. More on that in our next meetings. Also, the development happens in a 2-week cycle called sprint. If you look at the diagram, it has all the phases similar to waterfall, but the requirements are limited to only those which can be completed in 2 weeks. So let's say in the first sprint, 2 features have to be developed, then the focus would be to detail out the user stories related to those 2 features, so that it can be designed, developed, tested and deployed. Also, the benefit in this model is that at the end of 2 weeks, you will be able to see the developed features and screens instead of waiting for months to get a glimpse of the product. If you want changes or improvements, they can be easily accommodated and can be picked up in the upcoming sprints. So let's say after 3 sprints, we have developed all the required 7 features for MVP and you are happy with those 7, then we can deploy only that set and it can be available for the customers. So we can get a basic working version of the app out to the customers in 3 months, as I indicated in my email earlier, and then we can continue to add features every sprint and make it available to the customers on a regular basis. Jane's excitement seemed to grow and she replied, I like this model better. Can't wait to get started. She beamed with joy. What is the next step? Jane asks. Alex replies, Discovery phase. Hope you enjoyed this episode and you have learned the below concepts on why to use Agile. Let's summarize. It is an iterative model. This model can be used when the requirements are not clear, which is the case in most of the projects. It is flexible, requirement changes can be easily accommodated. Time to market is considerably less and upgrades are frequently delivered. It is less risky. Also, based on the feedback, course correction is easy. We will continue the story through the discovery phase. Wondering what a discovery phase is? Wait for the next episode. If you have not subscribed, please do so and click on the bell icon so that you will be notified when the next episode is out. Thank you. Hello there. Welcome to episode 2 of the Agile methodology tutorial for beginners series. If you have not checked out the first episode yet, please use the link in the description box or you can click on the card on the top right corner to check it out before you watch this episode. Story so far. Jane wanted a home delivery mobile app for her restaurant Vegan Gardens. Jane meets Alex, a consultant from WebWeave app development company, and Alex explains that they can have a basic working app in customers' hand within 3 months using Agile methodology. Jane is so thrilled with this proposal. Please subscribe to our channel if you have not done so already and also hit the bell icon so that you will be notified when the next episodes are posted. Let's continue our story. Jane was very pleased with Alex's proposal to use Agile methodology for development of her mobile app. She confirms WebWeave as her technology partner for development of the app. Alex works with Jane to complete the onboarding procedures like contracts, payment schedules, and so on. There are several Agile frameworks like Scrum, Kanban, Extreme Programming available. Alex and his team are going to follow the Scrum framework to develop the app. We will cover Scrum in detail in the upcoming episodes. Jane was delighted to get started after completion of the onboarding formalities and asks Alex, "What's next?" Alex responds, "Discovery phase." Jane says, "That sounds exciting," and asks if he could explain it further. Alex continues, "Discovery phase is the most important part of the software development life cycle. In this phase, we focus on understanding the business and customer needs in detail and capture them in the form of requirements." Jane nods. "The discovery phase consists of 2 stages," continues Alex. "First step in the discovery phase is to identify the stakeholders who are impacted or receive benefit from this change. Your team managers, key staff, and customers are few of these, to quote an example. Second step involves engagement of these stakeholders to understand their needs and gather their requirements." "Thanks, Alex, for giving me a clear understanding of this," said Jane. Alex then asks Jane about the key stakeholders in her team whom he should engage to discuss further. This could include branch managers, key staff members, and also the current team who are handling the home delivery department. Jane then searches her files and then gives Alex a copy of her organization chart and states that it has the list of various division managers and team leaders from different departments and would give the details he needed. Alex thanks Jane and tells her that she has missed another set of key stakeholders. Jane confirms that the chart should cover all of her catering chain. Alex replies, "Your customers." Jane smiles back, "Yeah, you're right, almost forgot." Alex continues, "Can we meet a few of your regular customers and speak with them to know their expectations from this mobile app, just to confirm if our thought process is in line with their needs?" Jane replies that she has most of her customers on a mailing list and she can also check with a few regular customers for their time. Alex said that this had offered him an awesome starting point. He also wanted to think about the strategy for the involvement of those stakeholders and then discuss it with her. Alex returns to office and drafts the engagement proposal and shares with Jane. A full-day workshop on Monday. Survey to customers on Tuesday, and this will be based on Monday's session. Focus group meeting with the customers on Friday. Jane agrees to the plan. Alex arranges a full-day workshop in the office of WebWeave. He books a big conference room for 20 people and arranges facilities such as whiteboards, projectors, adequate seating, and so on. Refreshments such as lunch, coffee, and snacks were also planned. Next, Alex prepares a comprehensive agenda for the day. It has the session specifics for the day so that the stakeholders come prepared for the sessions. He sends out an invite to all the stakeholders. He gets acceptance from majority of them but gets declined from Richard, who is listed as the chairman. Alex then asks if he should reschedule for a convenient day but gets no response from Richard. Alex asks Jane about Richard. Jane sighs and tells that Richard is her father and that he is not very keen on this idea. She also informs that she just has the budget for basic version of the app and beyond that they needed approval from him to go further. She also said that she thought she could change his mind by showing him the first version of the app. Jane also asks Alex if he could speak to Richard separately and get his acceptance for the project. Alex nods and informs that he could meet him separately, understand his concerns, work to mitigate the same, and facilitate an agreement. He calls up Richard and requests for his time. Richard wasn't keen on attending the workshop, but he tells Alex that he could meet him at his office on Thursday at 11 a.m. Alex thanks Richard for the same. In the meantime, Jane confirms back that she has set up 1 hour slot post-Friday lunch with few of her regular customers who had agreed to participate in the focus group session. Alex was delighted and tells her that they could quickly run past the ideas with them. Now, the sessions were booked for the next week and the same were blocked in their calendars. Alex talks to his organization and provides the specifications for this project in order to bring in the project team. In Scrum methodology, Alex is playing the role of a product owner. More on roles and responsibilities in next episodes. Phil gets assigned to the project as a business analyst and will assist Alex in capturing and refining the requirements. In the meantime, Alex spends some time doing benchmarking and market analysis. He takes a look at the trends and patterns of the restaurant industry. The trend signified that there would be year-on-year increase in the online home delivery orders, which would be great for Jane's business. He also does a comprehensive research about a few well-known and successful restaurants to know what they have been doing to get there. He finds that few have their own app and service. Few have their own app but rely on third-party service for delivery. Few have listed their service as a part of third delivery app for booking and delivery. It was Monday. Alex reaches office early and checks if all the facilities are in place. He greets Jane and her staff who arrive on time. He then uses the shared agenda to write the workshop. Phil, the business analyst, also takes part in the workshop and plays the role of a scribe, documenting the summary of discussions, decisions, requirements, and open items. Jane's team was enthusiastic and came up with a good chunk of requirements for both customer side and staff side. The workshop was a success, offering a better understanding of the needs of the team. Alex spends the last session of the workshop by providing a walkthrough of the high-level requirements that were captured during the workshop. Customer side requirements. Number 1. Register and login. Number 2. Items grouped by categories. Number 3. Search for items. Number 4. Add and remove items. Number 5. Online payment. Card, internet banking, wallets. Number 6. Tracking. Number 7. Support. Staff side requirements. Number 1. Staff portal. Number 2. Order alert. Number 3. Support addressal. Number 4. GPS navigation for delivery staff. Stakeholders agreed and then everyone left for the day. The following day, Alex works with Phil to come up with the survey questions based on the features logged from the previous day's workshop. Questions were based along the lines below. Would they order online? How many times would they order in a week? Whether they prefer the mobile app to the web app? The operating system of their phones? Whether they would like to make online payments, and so on. Alex had spoken to Jane to get the respondents a discount voucher code to promote the survey submission. Jane had agreed to give them 15% off on their next order at Vegan Gardens, as this data was very valuable and would save her thousands of dollars later. Alex uses a survey software to send an online survey to the email of the customers. He sets Thursday as the deadline to complete the survey. As planned, Alex goes to Richard's office on Wednesday. Richard greets him and they begin a conversation. Alex asks Richard the reason for not liking the home delivery mobile app idea. Richard says dining is an experience and to experience it, customers need to come to the restaurant. If home delivery service is available, then customers will stop coming to the restaurant. Alex uses active learning technique, acknowledges his concerns, and takes notes about the discussions. Alex shows the industry study reports to Richard and mentions that many people prefer to dine at home and hence the revenue would decrease over a period of time if home delivery was not offered. He also mentions about the competitors who were already into it. He also suggests that they could start delivering in the areas in which they did not have a branch. Alex says, However, I agree with you that dining is an experience and people who want the experience will still come for it. Richard was convinced. However, he wanted the actual data for his restaurant. Alex mentions that they would be initially deploying it to one of their branches, do a split testing, and come back with the results before rolling out to the other branches. Richard was happy with this approach. Alex shakes hands with Richard and makes his way back to the office. Alex and Phil, as planned, head to Vegan Gardens for the focus group session on Friday. In the workshop, which was held earlier that week with Jane's team, customer-facing requirements were identified. However, getting them validated by the actual customers and identifying any of their additional needs is very crucial to ensure that a right product is built. Focus group is one such technique to achieve this. Alex selects a few open-ended questions from the survey which was sent to the customers earlier. During the session, Alex uses them to get the customer's opinion and also checks if they have any additional needs. Phil makes a note of the participants' feedback. Once all the items in the questionnaire were completed, Alex thanked the participants for their help. Focus group was also insightful. Couple of new requirements came up, like recurring feature where customers would be getting lunch or dinner on a daily basis. They also wanted live chat to be available in the app to address issues in real time. Post the focus group session, Phil compiles the reports based on the insights received and shares the same with the key stakeholders. On Friday evening, Alex and Phil download the responses from the survey software and start their analysis. One key info emerged from the customer's response. 65% of the customers who had responded had Android phones. This would be helpful in prioritization. Friday evening, Alex had a phone call with Jane to summarize the findings so far. Jane was overwhelmed with the progress. "What are our next steps?" she asks. Alex responds, "Sprint Zero." Jane was curious to know what Sprint Zero was all about. Let's summarize the learnings from this episode. Number 1. Discovery phase is all about identifying the needs and requirements of the impacted stakeholders. Number 2. First step in this phase is to identify the stakeholders. Both internal and external stakeholders should be identified. Some of the ways to identify the impacted stakeholders are by speaking to the sponsor of the project, having a look at the organizational charts, process flows, and so on. Number 3. Engagement. There are varieties of ways to engage the stakeholders based on the scenarios. We touched upon few techniques in this video like workshop with the internal team, focus groups with customers, interview with difficult stakeholders, and survey for collecting details from huge volume of stakeholders. Number 4. If you miss a stakeholder, it would be a catastrophe for the project go live, and hence we should ensure that we have identified all the stakeholders who will be impacted and engage them. Also, like Richard, there will always be difficult stakeholders who are not happy with the idea, and therefore speaking to them alone and trying to address their concerns with data and other supporting materials is the best way to go ahead. We have a detailed how-to training videos on these topics. The links have been included in the description below for your reference. Check it out. Watch out for our next episode to learn about Sprint Zero. Until then, bye and happy learning. Hello there. Welcome to episode 3 of the Agile methodology tutorial for the beginner series. If you have not checked out the first and the second episodes yet, please use the links in the description box, or you can click the card on the top right corner to check it out before you watch this episode. Story so far. Jane wanted a home delivery mobile app for her restaurant Vegan Gardens. Jane meets Alex, a consultant from WebWeave app development company, and Alex explains that they can have a basic working app in the customer's hand within 3 months using Agile methodology. Jane is so thrilled and signs up as a client. Alex, with the help of Phil, the business analyst assigned to this project, conduct different elicitation sessions such as workshops, interviews, survey and focus groups, and collects the business and user requirements for the mobile app. Please subscribe to our channel if you have not done so already, and also hit the bell icon so that you will be notified when the next episodes are posted. Now let's proceed with the story. Alex had mentioned Jane about the next step in the process, Sprint Zero. She was aware of sprints, which is a 2-week duration for delivering product increments. But the term Sprint Zero made her curious as to why they were starting from Sprint Zero rather than Sprint 1. Sprint Zero is a preparation sprint. There is no product increment delivered. Focus is on the below 3 key items. First one, onboarding of Scrum team. Second, creation of product backlog and prioritization for MVP, minimum viable product. And the third one, architectural tech stack finalization and environment setup. We will go deep into each of these topics as the story progresses. Let's look at the first item, onboarding of the Scrum team. Alex had already initiated the request for the Scrum team in his company WebWeave as soon as Jane had signed the agreement a couple of weeks back. The team had been assembled now. Let's go over the composition of the team. Typically, Scrum team involves 3 roles. First one, the product owner. As mentioned earlier, Alex is playing the role of a product owner interacting with the business and the end users, that is Jane's team and her customers, to understand their needs and requirements. He will play the main link between end users and the Scrum team. He also maintains and prioritizes the product backlog, more on that shortly. Second one, the other key role is Scrum Master. Scrum Master helps to keep the team accountable to their commitments to the business, remove any roadblocks that might impede the team's productivity, organize critical meetings. We will have more on this in the next episode. Jim joins the team as a Scrum Master. Third one, development team. The third role is development team. The size can vary from 3 to 9 people. Development team is a self-organized, cross-functional team with all the skills required to turn product backlog into increments of potentially releasable functionality. Scrum recognizes no titles for development team members, regardless of the work being performed by the person. It comprises of developers, tester, business analyst, and solution architect. The composition of the development team is as follows. Business analyst, Phil, whom we have already met in the previous episode. Developers, Ron, Kim, and Adrian. Tester, Kate, and solution architect, Tom. Jim sets up a meet and greet session with all the team members. Next, we move on to the second item, creation of product backlog and MVP prioritization. Alex refers to the requirements captured from the elicitation sessions which were held the previous week and then starts logging epics and user stories in Jira. Epics are high-level requirements and they are broken down further into fragments called user stories. We have detailed videos on creating epics and user stories in Jira, which is widely used tool for Agile projects. The link has been provided in the description. Check it out later on. All the epics and user stories put together is termed as a product backlog. Next off is the prioritization of this product backlog. As mentioned earlier in the first video, Jane wants to put the mobile app in the hands of the customers with a minimum set of features. This is termed as MVP or minimum viable product. Alex needs Jane's team's feedback to finalize the scope for MVP. He uses a technique called user story mapping. All the epics and user stories are arranged from a user journey perspective as shown in this diagram. Firstly, the customer would browse the menu for selection of the food item. Then they select and order the items they desire, followed by selection of payments method, and lastly track the order until it is delivered to them. As shown in the diagram, an epic is created for each of these major steps in the customer journey, and then they are further broken down into user stories with specific requirements. Alex then arranges for a requirement prioritization meeting with Jane and her team, something similar to the workshop session from the last episode. In the session, Alex walks through the epics and user stories and asks Jane and her team for the necessary features for the MVP. It was agreed during the session that the MVP would have 9 user stories and that the mobile app would be limited to the Android version only, as Alex had learned earlier from the survey that 65% of the users had Android phones. Alex thanks Jane and her team. We have a detailed video on the user story mapping. I have provided the link in the description. Check it out. Alex then asks Phil, the business analyst, to expand the stories and add supporting documents and acceptance criteria. Again, we have detailed videos on this. Refer to the description below. Jim sets up a refinement session with the Scrum team. This is the first type of event. The purpose is to go over the stories for the upcoming sprint and ensure all the details are available. Else, the details and clarifications can be added by the business analyst or the product owner. Let's move on to the last item, architectural envisioning and tech stack finalization. The tech stack is finalized by the solution architect. It consists of front-end technologies that are used to develop the interface that interacts with the end users. Back-end, this involves your server hosting, databases, programming language, business logic, and so on. For this Android app, Tom selects Android UI for front-end and Kotlin as the programming language. Developers Kim, Ron, and Adrian work on getting the environment set up with the help of infrastructure team. Different environments are created for development, testing, pre-prod, and production. Then they work on configuring the IDE, a consolidated platform that provides necessary libraries and interfaces, and supporting tools required for development. Android Studio would be used for development of the app. Kate works on obtaining the necessary Android devices for testing, as the first release was decided to be on Android platforms. And she also works on setting up the test automation tool, RTM. Hope you learned about Sprint 0 in this video. In our next video, we will go over what happens in Sprint 1. Until then, happy learning. Hello there. Welcome to episode 4 of the Agile Methodology Tutorials for Beginner series. If you have not checked out the earlier episodes yet, please use the links in the description box to check it out before you watch this episode. Story so far. Jane wanted a home delivery mobile app for her restaurant Vegan Gardens. Jane works with WebWeave, an app development company, to get this app developed using Agile methodology. High-level requirements were gathered, requirements were prioritized for MVP, that is minimum viable product, and the Scrum team was onboarded and all the required tech tools and environment setups were done as a part of Sprint 0. Now we continue the story with Sprint 1. Please subscribe to our channel if you have not done so already, and also hit the bell icon so that you will be notified when the next episodes are posted. Sprint 1 is when the actual development work begins. Each sprint in Agile Scrum consists of the below 5 events or ceremonies: Sprint Refinement, Sprint Planning, Daily Scrum, Sprint Demo, and Sprint Retrospective. We will go over these events one by one, covering what happens during each of them. This slide should give you a visual representation of when each of these events will happen during the sprint. As we discussed earlier, sprint is a 2 weeks time box, excluding the weekends. A regular sprint typically consists of 10 working days as you see in the slide. The schedule goes as follows. Sprint planning happens on the first day of the sprint. Daily Scrum happens on a daily basis. Sprint refinement, which we touched upon in the previous episode, happens during the second week of the sprint. Sprint demo and sprint retrospective happens on the last day of the sprint. We will go over each of these events one by one, covering what happens during each of them in the upcoming slides. Stay tuned. Let's start off with the first event, sprint planning. Before we deep dive, I just want to take you back to the previous episode where story refinement was done as part of Sprint 0 and user stories related to registration, login and user browse by categories were refined. Alex and Phil did a story walkthrough and the team asked questions, clarifications were provided and further details were also added to the user stories. Now let's come back to sprint planning. Let's start off with purpose. The purpose of sprint planning is to craft the sprint goal and draft a plan to achieve it. Attendees, PO, the product owner, Scrum team and the Scrum Master. This event would be set up by the Scrum Master. The input for this event is the refined stories of the product backlog, which we just discussed. The stories refined in Sprint 0 would be picked up for the planning. These stories are again brought into team's focus. Alex provides the business context and Phil walks through the details in the user story and requests for the Scrum team to provide the estimated story points for completion of the user story. Story points in Agile are in Fibonacci series 0, 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13 and so on. And for a story, maximum story points would be 13. If it is more than 13, then the story should be broken down into 2 series. You may ask, what is a story point? Is it man days or hours? Well, no. One story point is a smallest unit of work taken by the team to complete a task, and it varies from one Scrum team to another. The estimation happens using a planning poker game. As soon as the product owner walks through the stories, each of the Scrum team member will estimate and have the card ready, and once everyone is ready, they reveal their estimated story points and the team discuss and agree to a common estimate. Once the refined stories are estimated, the team discusses on how much they can commit for the 2-week sprint. The combined story point is called velocity, and this becomes one of the parameters for next sprint planning. The team then divides the stories and assigns them to each team member and they begin to work. The estimation happens using a planning poker game. As soon as the PO and BA walk through the story, each team member will estimate and have the card ready. Once everyone has estimated, they will reveal the story points they have estimated and the team will discuss and agree on a common estimate. In our story, once Alex and Phil completed the walkthrough for registration, the team started estimating. As you can see, the estimates provided varied from 5 to 13. Now the team will discuss among themselves and come to a common agreement on the story points. Kate informs that there are lots of devices on which she needs to test and hence better go with 13, and the team agrees to that. The process was repeated for the remaining 2 stories, in which Jim the Scrum Master asked the team if they were okay with the delivery of those stories during the sprint, and the team responded positively. The cumulative story points 34 is known as velocity, and it will be used to plan the next sprint, with the team agreeing to take more or less depending on their experience. Each developer assigned one task in their name
and the required subtasks for design, development, testing, documentation would be created for each story, and the team gets to work on it. This concludes the sprint planning event. Let's move on to the next event, Daily Scrum. The Scrum Master organizes the Daily Scrum, which takes place every morning. It is a short 15 to 30 minutes event. The goal of this event is to assess progress towards the sprint goal and to address any blockers or impediments. Attendees are Scrum Master, Scrum Team, and PO is optional. In each of the daily Scrum, each Scrum team talks about the 3 points: what they did yesterday, what is the plan for today, impediments if any. Everyone provided the updates and informed that they were not facing any impediments except Ron, who was having an issue with the technical aspect of the story for creating the browse functionality. Jim made a note of this, and once everybody was done with their updates, Jim, Ron, and Tom, the solution architect, discussed the issue in detail for resolution. The same process was repeated on a daily basis for the entire sprint duration. Let's move towards the next event, which is the sprint refinement. This is similar to what was done in Sprint 0. Alex and Phil provided walkthrough of the next set of stories from the product backlog to the team. The team asked questions and requested for additional details to be included in the stories, and Alex and Phil provided further clarity on business and functional requirements, and Phil made the required updates to the user stories. These stories would be picked up for the next sprint. This event happens in the second week of the sprint, but can be done earlier as well. Again, this will vary from team to team. Let's move on to the next event, which is the sprint review. The team continued to develop and test the committed user stories. Sprint review happens on the last day of the sprint. The purpose of the sprint demo is to showcase the product increment which the team would have completed in the sprint. Attendees of this event were PO, Scrum Team, Scrum Master, and additionally Jane and her team from Vegan Gardens. What happened? Alex the PO kick-started the session and conveyed what was completed in that sprint, and Kate the tester in the team gave a demo of the developed functionality for registration, login, and browse features to the audience. Jane and team were quite happy with the progress and the mobile app screens. One suggestion she made was that the font to be modified and that it be in line with the restaurant's website. Phil made a note of this feedback and logged a user story to be picked up for correction during the next sprint. Let's move on to the last event, Sprint Retrospective. This is the last sprint event and happens post the sprint demo. Purpose is to identify areas of continuous improvement. Again, attendees are Scrum Team, Product Owner, and the Scrum Master. The listed 3 questions would be asked, and the team members can provide their feedbacks. What went well? What did not go well? And what can be improved? The sprint demo, feedback, impediments, and estimates can be discussed, and the team can work on corrective actions in the upcoming sprints. This concludes Sprint 1, and the same would be repeated in each of the sprint. In the next concluding episode of this series, we will see the process of taking the developed product to the customers. Thank you. Welcome to episode 5 of the Agile Methodology tutorial for Beginner series. If you have not checked out the earlier episodes yet, please use the links in the description box to check it out before you watch this episode. Story so far. Jane wanted a home delivery mobile app for her restaurant Vegan Gardens. Jane works with WebWeave, an app development company, to get this app developed using Agile methodology. High-level requirements were gathered, requirements were prioritized for MVP, that is minimum viable product, and the Scrum team was onboarded and all the required tech tools and environment setups were done as part of Sprint 0. And we looked at different events or ceremonies which were part of a sprint and product increment was showcased. In this episode, we will conclude the story with the go live of the mobile app. Jane was very happy with what she saw as part of Sprint 1 demo. She asked Alex, "Sprint 1 demo was good. What are the next steps for go live?" Alex was happy to hear Jane's feedback, and then he mentioned that there were 3 key activities before go live. First one, development of remaining MVP functionality in the subsequent sprints. Second, user acceptance testing. Third, operational procedures creation and staff training. And then go live. We will cover each of these activities in the subsequent slides. As we saw in the previous episode, Sprint 1 delivered the 3 functionalities register, login and browse feature for food items in the menu. The team continued the same process involving the 5 sprint ceremonies for each of the subsequent sprints. Sprint 2 delivered add and remove to the cart functionalities, menu search for customers to search for food items, and also feature of accepting cash on delivery from the customer. Sprint 3 delivered customers' ability to pay using debit or credit card, expected time tracker for the food to be delivered, and the customer support feature for any issues faced by the customers. These functionalities were showcased as part of the sprint demos to Jane and her team. They were very happy with the functionalities showcased, and the minimum viable product features had been developed and was ready. As all the features decided for MVP had been developed, the next step towards go live was user acceptance testing or UAT. Alex's team made the application available for UAT. There were 2 sets of people who were performing the test. First one, Vegan Garden staff. They checked the developed functionalities and ensured that the app was customer friendly. They also focused keenly on the staff side of the application, that is, whether they were receiving the orders properly, online payment was showing up in their business's current account, and whether they were able to receive and respond back to the customer's issues. The second set of audience for testing were the selected customers who visited the restaurant regularly. Jane requested for their help on reviewing the application and requested feedback. These customers checked whether the app was easy for navigation and ordering, and if there were any issues during the booking process. The defects identified during the testing process were fixed by the Scrum team. New features and feedbacks were added to product backlog as a user story by Alex and Phil for prioritization later on. While the UAT is going on, another activity which is done in parallel is drafting of user manual and staff training. Phil and Alex worked on creating a user manual with details of the developed functionalities and step-by-step instructions for usage with clear screenshots. This would be the go-to guide for the staff to start using the application and also to refer for any issues in the future. Also, Kate and Phil provided live training sessions to make them familiar with the user interfaces and functionalities. MVP functionalities were developed. User acceptance testing was successful. The training and operational procedures were completed. Next was go live. If you remember from our episode 1, Jane had an email list of all her customers. She sent them an email to try out the application and order food from comfort of their home. Her website was updated with the link to the application, and there were cards kept on each table with instructions for downloading the app. Jane was very happy and thanked WebWeave team for launching the app in around 3 months as initially planned. So was her father. She got a good amount of orders during the launch week, proving that there was a demand for the home delivery, adding one more revenue stream to her business. Post go live, Customers' feedback was recorded and got added to the product backlog. Data from the app was used for running campaigns. WebWeave Scrum team was business as usual and they improved the product sprint after sprint. This concludes our Agile training series for beginners. Hope the series gave a good insight of whole Agile process right from inception to go live and post-increment release. Let us know your thoughts about the series and also if you want to cover similar topics in this manner. Thanks for watching until the next video. Happy learning!